Mainline track is code 70. All other tracks off the main line are code 55. All handmade turnouts, above 106 of them. Starting the 2% grade up to Great Falls. You can hear the diesel notching up for more power at this speed. Viewing the track like this, you start to pick up all the faults. Broken ladder on the signal, broken blade on the point. To come back and do maintenance in these areas. Shut the main line down for a day to do that. The engine is just notched down a couple of notches as we're now on the flat, approaching Great Falls Station on the right. Down the 2% grade towards Abra. As we cross the Trestle Bridge, you can see one of the check wheels is out of place. That will have to be fixed. Bright sunlight in front of us as we come through Abra. We're pulling off the main line to come into the yard at Shelby.
get down on hands and knees and go in, but
Yeah, no, that's... Just a quick tour of Great Northern Down Under. It's the Great Falls subdivision of the Great Northern Railway in 1960. Right at the tail end of steam, but today mostly diesels running and doing. This is the yard at Shelby. Trains on the main line from St Paul to Seattle. Drop cars here and pick cars up. The ones dropped get sorted by the yard master, and they will be sent to the different towns around the subdivision. In the yard master is looking for the cars for Great Falls North. These will all be put on one track, ready for a train to take it to Great Falls North. They come in from different places. These are the cars being looked for in the yard, and they'll be pulled, ready to go to Great Falls. We have one 40-foot box car with a normal door and two 40-foot box cars with double doors. That's the XA classification. Switching at Great Falls North. It's all tail switching at Great Falls North, so no run around required. Picking up boxcars from J.I. Case factory and dropping empty ones in ready for loading. The waybill tells us where the car has got to be placed. In real life, the conductor would carry this, or it would be attached to the side of the car. Because our eyes are not that good, we can't see the small print when it's attached to a car, so we make the car card. And this is a double door box car. It's red, and the number is Great Northern 38144. On these two cars, you can see the board on the bottom right corner of the door, and on the double door it's in the middle of the right hand door. To put a little label on there, we cannot see it. And in N scale we have trouble seeing the car sometimes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the roundtable for today with lots of people from all over the world, and I believe that this roundtable is about remote ops. Hopefully, yes, it is, and so we're all remote from each other, which is very very appropriate. Martin's stuffing his face, so I've been asked to step in. So I put my Australian hat on. All right, it's an Australian Division 1 hat. It's equipped with all the Australian accessories that you may require, including a nice bit of ballage roughage, bit of sandpaper underneath. But so I'm all set for this. So we have some great people. So let's introduce everyone that we've got on our round table. We've got down at the bottom as guest is actually the one and only Mr. Dave Abelese. Hi, Dave.
Hey,
Good,
Dave.
good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure to be here, Gordy and Martin. Thank you, and Brad, everyone. This is great. It should be a great discussion this morning.
Okay, so yeah, Dave is joining us from his basement, showing that we can access this basement at any time. And Rapido has also proven this week they can access Dave's wallet at any time. Then we've got Daz over in Western Australia.
South Australia.
South Australia. Sorry.
South Australia.
West from where? It's west from Brad.
Yeah, it's west from us.
Yeah, west from Brad. Everything's west from Brad.
And Daz does remote ops with his train controller. Get this right.
Correct.
Yeah. And we have Andy Ambrose joining us from Essex in the south of England. Hi, Andy.
Hello, geezer. You all right?
So Andy's a member of the Silicon Valley Lines in California, all the way from the UK, and I think that kind of shows the power of what we can get out of remote ops. And then we've got James here from California.
Yep.
Hi, James.
Silicon Valley. Yeah, San Jose, all of that.
Cool. And we've got somebody else down there who I don't really recognize who that is.
No,
Brad.
neither do I.
Okay, cool. Right. Great. We haven't got anyone else. And we've got Martin. Everyone just ignore Martin, it's fine.
Yeah.
But all of the people that we've assembled on this panel either are owners of layouts that do remote operations or are involved in remote operations on a big scale. I don't know what really the plan of attack really, Brad, is this morning, but I know there's some questions and stuff that you've got that I don't have access to.
Hang on, is there meant to be a plan of attack? Because honestly, that's all I've got. Sorry, Gordy.
That's great. No, that's great. I've
okay,
got my one here as well. So
perfect. No, we do have a bit of a plan of attack. So everyone out there in the chat, if you have any question for any of us here, based on remote ops and the things that we do, I think we've got most bases covered here. Throw them in the chat, I'll get them to the guys and we'll answer them the best we can as we go. But let's start out with something fairly easy along the lines of what are some of the advantages or disadvantages you see with the remote ops that we've got going at the moment with everyone? Anyone? And not
I
Gordy.
can probably add to that.
Dave, I'm going to go with Dave, yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank everyone. I don't think I've ever seen Martin with such nicely combed hair. I mean, that's just remarkable. I think, and he does the Jenkins. I love it. It's just perfect. But no, this is a group of people that I've been looking forward to speaking with. Andy Ambrose and Daz. I mean, we've traded messages online a bunch of times, and it's a pleasure to see both of you gentlemen here. And I think some of this was really spectacular to me to start with, would be to look at the fact that here we are, right? Now, this is the end of a worldwide pandemic, God willing, as things are unfolding. Arguably the worst time in operations history for the hobby of model railroading since it started, because so many operating sessions were canceled. So many different organizations weren't able to get together. And yet a handful of people with just in the right place at the right time, with the right technology and trusting the right experts, I think. Here we are talking across the entire globe in real time. We're talking to islands off the coast of Scotland. We're talking to a basement in New Jersey. We're talking to 3 or 4 different parts of Australia, which is literally opposite from where I am in New Jersey. And it's real time. This shows the power, I think, of the internet. It's the golden age for remote operations. So I think for the first thing, to meet and be able to speak with people of this caliber that are involved with this variety of operations, but to do it all in real time, where we can share and learn from each other and grow, make mistakes, which is part of what I do best. But it really is a privilege, and so I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. I think to balance that bright spot, one of the toughest spots is to figure out how to keep that ball rolling now that the pandemic starts to wind down, and where do we see it fitting into our regular operating schemes? Does it have a larger or a smaller role with no pandemic? And there's a lot to talk about tonight or this morning, depending where you are.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that?
I think we should go to James.
Yeah, James.
Go to James.
Yep.
Go James. Yeah.
Well, as to follow on for Dave there, you get to bring in everybody around the world. We have some world-class layouts out there, and people will never get to operate on them because they can't make the trip to wherever they're at. This gives everybody the ability to operate on those world-class layouts if the owners want to set something like this up. All it really needs is a little bit of, electrical know-how, a little bit of, not really programming, but configuration on cameras and such, and then, a good internet connection, and you can have people all the way from Australia or from, in Andy's case, the UK operating on layouts, every couple weeks remotely. One of the big cons, though, I'd say, is switching kind of becomes a little hard. I'd say that's the big con. But, in the grand scheme of things, that's not really a big deal.
Okay. Anyone else want to add any advantages? Daz, I know you're on a different kind of platform, so any advantages, disadvantages?
Any disadvantages? I'll start with the advantages first, then I'll work on to the disadvantages. So I think that the biggest, as I think Dave rightfully points out, is I think underlying everything we do in this hobby is we are promoting the world's best hobby in whatever way. And this is obviously another arm or another, as I think when I spoke to a gentleman on my YouTube channel a while ago, it was more to do with promotion and working out each other's issues. You could talk across the world. Okay, so it's like easy to share your issues, so to speak. My biggest issues, I suppose, and the cons or the disadvantages is, as James rightly pointed out, is an internet connection. My internet connection is not real great. I got wireless NBN, so it's a lot slower from my point of view. So I've had to. Now I'm sort of in the infancy. We've got Dave at one end of the spectrum, and I'm sort of the other, where I'm sort of just starting to dip my toe a little bit more into the remote ops. That the internet, how do I get that visual? Because James points out the switching is made a little bit more difficult. But obviously, if we get better CCTV, or exactly how you're going to do it, whether it was a rail fanning camera or front of house camera, like what the Silicon Valley guys and girls there do, I think is what is required. And I'm still trying to work out from my point of view how I'm going to do that, where I do like a hybrid between rail fanning cameras and some sort of switching cam on front of a locomotive or a sled car or however we do it.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges definitely is the switching aspect, because you almost universally need someone on the ground when there's a remote operation. You're dealing with switching, but sort of, and I actually completely agree with Dazzy. Like, I think that's because of the amount of internet that it takes and the bandwidth for multiple cameras and the coordination between those cameras, that can be an unwieldy part of the process. The way we've worked around that on the Onondaga cutoff, which, as you guys see behind me here, this is Onondaga Yard at the top of the hill, and the way we work around that is that on the prototype, the engineer doesn't normally see what switching is going on. To this day and age, when you've only got 2-man crews in the United States, in most cases, sometimes just the one, a lot of that's coordinated via radio. And I think one of the key pieces to the Onondaga cutoff's remote operations is the radio being, and this is something that Gordy and Marty can both speak to because they've both been part of the session here. There's the radio, I think, allows the operator, the engineer, to sit back and trust the eyes on the ground. 3 cars to a spot, 2 cars, half a car, okay, good enough. The key is that you got to keep the radio channel open so that you can hear that. Otherwise, you get stepped on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if I can go on, Martin, do you want to jump in on me?
Oh, well, I've stopped eating now, you see.
Oh, right, okay, just checking.
Operating on Dave's layout was great. What blew me away was the fact of the lack of lag. I mean, I'm in Brisbane, which is a major city, so we've got supposedly a good quality internet connection. But I was sitting here and looking at the form-up yard where my train was ready to depart from, and I was turning the headlight on and off, and I think there was about a 2-second delay, which when you think about it, I'm hitting a mobile phone here, it's talking to a router that's talking to a layout or another computer in New Jersey, and then transferring that into a DCC command and then sending it down the line, and it's all happening within a couple of seconds. I think that's brilliant. But with the shunting, I think shunting and switching is going to be a little while yet. I think the drawback is with the cameras at the moment, to get them small enough to go in the cars like we're already using, they have to be fixed focal length. It's when we get a camera that we can change the focal length, so as you're coming up behind a car, you can actually keep it in focus. So you can, otherwise it's just going to turn into a big blurry blob, and until you hit it, you won't know you're there, which won't make switching that much fun.
So I'm just going to quickly jump in before you, Gordy, because I see there has been our first comment in the chat. Sorry, Gordy, I know. Martin,
No, it's fine.
I thought you said you finished eating for one.
So that's dessert. He's got his dessert. That was just the main course.
So the comment in the chat, because you're talking about how hard switching could possibly be, the comment says, but Martin, weren't you just running a train from one end to the other end of a layout and had an accident? Is that a true fact?
No, look, Dave is here and he can attest to the fact that I did not cause a crash.
It was just a busted knuckle.
Okay. Gordy has spread a vicious rumour worldwide. It's akin to the flat Earth theory. I mean, would I give up.
Perfect. Sorry, Gordy. Right. We'll continue.
Right, we're just rebasing this back to where we originally were with the advantages and disadvantages. Look, as I see it, we're everything's come together very well, right? Pre-pandemic, people were working on this technology, right? And you've got Wi-Fi throttles starting to come out. So we had engine driver and we throttle on our phones, but then the Proto throttle came out as the first true Wi-Fi throttle, and then TCS have just come out with 2 Wi-Fi throttles. They're also coming out with a command station and stuff, and that just enables you to operate somebody else's layout so easy. It's great. There's and the technology's there, and it's coming on. I think what we're going to end up finding now as we move forward is that there's different models and it's different things work for different folks, but that ties into what's probably a brand new discipline in the world of layout design, and that is layout design for remote operations. We have this layout design for operations, and people do layout design for remote operations. It's going to be a layout that is not going to be the switchman's nightmare. Right, it's not going to be somebody modeling the LA harbor scene or Boston Harbor or something like that, where there's tons and tons of switching, unless you've got the fiber optic cable, that's about this big to put that down the internet. And that we got to accept that there's those limits, but there's different things. So like on Dave's layout, for example, on the Onondaga cutoff, you've got the main line, and you've got the switching, and you've got a basement. And for those that are how do I put this? Rotundly challenged like myself, fitting into narrow aisles is not particularly attractive. And some people's layouts, when you start multi-decking a layout like my layout is, that's under construction, you can't fit enough people into the space to comfortably fit. And I think as we go through the out of the pandemic, and I understand in Australia that you guys, touch wood, apart from Victoria, it continues to be quite mild, the impact on daily life in Australia. The impact for Dave and myself and for Andy has been, and for James, has been quite severe. And the challenge there is, do you really want to have 20 people in your house, even in your basement, even squashed into a confined space where each person's getting an average of about 4 to 6 square feet to move, right? And the answer is probably no. So for the future, what the big advantage of remote ops is that it means a whole portion of your layout, or the roles, which I know we're going to come on to, so I'm not going to mention it, but the roles within an operating session can be outsourced off-site. And so I know there's people that have dispatchers upstairs in their houses, already in different rooms. If your dispatcher's in a different room, your dispatcher could be anywhere. But now you can have realistic mainline operations going on in the background with real operators, rather than just having the same train going round. And you've got, you say some of the roles are going to have to be in the basement, and some of the roles are going to be out of the basement. And there's a whole hybrid operating session model that comes with that. My particular layout has a busy mainline section that I have designed so that it can be fully remotely operated. There should be no switching. There's no breaking and making of trains, because those trains are going hot shot from Chicago to Canada or up to the Twin Cities on my layout. But then I've got a short line. Now, the short line has some trains that can be assembled by a crew in a yard and taken from the yard and run around, and they'll come back to the yard eventually. Those could be remote. But the yard crew can't be remote. So it's kind of like, it's not the answer to everything, but it's if you think about, if you just like anything else in the hobby, if we think about how to use the technology properly, then it gives us great benefits.
I think that's an excellent slice through the whole thing, Gordy. Well put. And to add to that, I think one of the challenges for model railroading, there's a lot of concern worldwide for whether the hobby is growing or shrinking, and are we getting enough younger people involved? Sort of a side benefit to this remote operations, at least as far as I can see it, is that not only are we opening doors to more people to be involved, just in general, to the operating side, but you're allowing these different levels of operation to be accessible to different people, so people can learn, they can tumble, they can grow, and they can kind of see how it works for them. And it opens the door to this younger crowd that's already very tech savvy in a lot of ways. They grew up with these phones that I'm obviously still getting used to. So there's definitely a universality to operations because of the remote side of things, that I think a lot of the barriers to entry to operations are lower now, because it's familiar to more people, just because the digital format is so familiar to so many.
Yeah, and I think though it's important to note that Andy, as much as he still behaves like he's 21, is no longer 21. So this isn't a young person's part of the hobby, is it? This really is simple enough that it can be.
It's universal.
And yeah. So let's, Brad, we've got another question. We'll move on to.
I was able to do it before I could even use Google Sheets. So.
We know that. We know. But you're a special case. So
extremely. So let's move on.
Before you do that, though, I must say, with operating on Dave's layout, the only thing you really needed were 3 pieces of kit, and that was the control of the train using your mobile phone, looking at the CTC panel on a piece of software, and talking on Skype. And if you can run those 3 things, you can have a real good time.
Okay, thanks. So moving on, look, sorry, Andy.
I was just going to say, because I'm so old, as Gordy pointed out, I already have very slow reactions, and I do understand Marty's incident, shall we call it, with a train on Dave's layout, because the very first time I drove the Silicon Valley lines, I managed to crash the El Capitan travelling at speed through the middle of a coal train, because I had about a 15 second delay on YouTube, and only picked up some of the signals as I'd gone flying past them.
Somebody phone Martin an ambulance.
But I didn't have a crash.
Marty, how did you keep that in so well for so long? That was
I was just like, I can't believe I'm hearing this.
He must be on mute.
All right,
Right.
Brad, fire us off in a different direction.
Okay, we'll go off on a different direction. We've got a lot of people sitting out here in the chat going, look, you guys have touched on a lot of a general operation of it all, but is remote operations really covering all aspects and facets of a true operation session? Is it possible to be 100% remote operated from a layout?
I think it would be, and this goes back to what Gordy was saying, I think it would be if you had the right kind of layout. I think you would need complete CTC. You would need a layout that's all about the through trains. So an example would be if someone modeled a part of, the Great Western in Britain, where it's just passenger train after passenger train after passenger train. The Northeast Corridor in the United States, or the Harrisburg line, Amtrak's Harrisburg line between Philadelphia and Harrisburg. James, I mean, like some of the corridors in the West between San Diego and San Francisco, where it's just, you're not switching, you're making station stops, and maybe somebody in the basement is, putting freight on or off a train, if you got that, if that's part of your operation. But the idea would be that you need that completely centralized traffic control, the density, and where you're not dealing with any shunting or switching, at least at this point. I agree too that fiber optics, if you got a fiber optic, you could put enough cameras in a yard that you probably could. And even in once we get something small enough to fit in the cab of a locomotive, you could do some of that yourself, depending on the prototype. So there is a niche, I think, where 100% operation is possible, but I think it requires a lot of signaling. It definitely requires a dispatcher who's lining things up so the crews don't have to do that themselves. All the switches would have to be power or no switches at all, depending on, again, what your prototype is. So you could do it, but it's a niche at this point, I think.
So depending on how your layout's set up too, like Silicon Valley lines, we can run all through trains if we make the operating sessions set up that way. The person who puts all of our operations together, he can actually choose which industries are turned on, and he's got all this fancy software that another member has made that allows him to set all this up, and we can switch over to all through trains if we choose to. And that's kind of what we did at the beginning when we set all this up. I think the first one was maybe August or September last year for our first remote ops. And I think everything was through trains. We only had a couple of people local for brakeman, or to basically re-rail trains and stuff when they inevitably split in half. Because you can't tell what happened in the back, And you don't really have that sense of, like, a real engineer would be able to tell if, they lost the whole train. Because all of a sudden their engine would go flying forward, and you can kind of get that depending on how big your train is. But, if it's a small one with a lot of light cars, you don't notice any difference.
I think, James, we have operated switching remotely on James's layout, where James had an overhead camera. And we were switching, based on his instructions. Yep, above his head now.
Yeah, it's not a moment, but...
All right. And we've discussed making that a pan, tilt and zoom camera. So the system I'm presently installing has two actual independent internet links. One of the links is the camera control link, which controls a multiplexer with 10 cameras on it. And the other is the link that drives the train itself from the cab cam. But like everything, I mean, the pros are, such a big list of positives, and the cons are that we haven't done it all yet because we've just not got there. But I think we will.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a Wian, right? When I was I used to operate a layout that was all DC block, and it was 400 foot long in someone's garden, and it was 5 independent buildings, and there was no such thing as a camera. And the trains would run 50 feet between the buildings. You couldn't see the train. It was all enclosed outside. If it was a nice day, the fronts of the structures would be taken off, so the people that were just watching the trains run could see the train, but you couldn't see your train coming. And we never had a problem. And that we never, yes, Annabelle. Yeah.
I can tell her.
We we never. Okay, go on. We never had a problem.
One of the things,
We never had a problem with losing trains, but I'll let Dave go while I deal with Annabelle.
well, and I admire what Gordy's doing. First of all, obviously, he's the new president of the National Model Railroad Association, which I think is awesome. But also in finding ways to bring us together. I think that's an important part of it. And one of the things to add, I think, to this question, if you're going to have 100% remote operations, again, it's possible, but there are some prerequisites, I think, to that are woven into the fabric of what it is that remote operations is. So, one of the tough things for both Gordy and Marty, I think, when we did our remote operating session, and it's overcomable, but it's a lack of familiarity with the layout itself. There's, without having put eyes on the railroad and how it actually goes, again, just like the prototype, we're following. The best part about operations is we're following the prototype. We're not just running trains, we're modeling railroading with an ing at the end. And it's the whole atmosphere, it's the camaraderie, it's the coming together. There is no railroad in the world that operates by itself with one person. It doesn't exist. Today's railroads all involve someone that at least fixes the track and someone that runs the trains at a bare minimum. But in almost every case, it's dozens, hundreds, thousands of people working together. Yeah. And in a world that's so insular, there's less. We don't appreciate just how many people have their hands in the pie for a railroad. But I think one of the things, and I just leaned over to pick it up, but I think having some paperwork, the dreaded paperwork, right? This is what everybody hates about operations, right? But it doesn't take a whole lot with today's software. I mean, if you're able to do a remote operation session, you can get on MS Word or Publisher or Google Documents, and you can download a couple images from the internet, and you can come up with, the way these are put together. So, of course, it's all, since it's in the face of the camera here, it's backwards. But the idea is that you come in and you have your whole railroad graphed out on paper so that when somebody comes in for the first time, they can see from one end of the railroad all the way to the other where the interlockings are, what the station names are, and you can put in stuff like the milepost or the number of cars between different sides. Just, there's different things you can even throw in, even though it's not particularly realistic for a real-time table. I downloaded a USGS map and built an actual geographic map of the railroad, and then behind that included sort of a diagram of the basement. Let me pull that up for you too, so you can see it. So this is both levels of the Onondaga cutoff in the basement there. So again, this took a couple of weeks to do. A lot of help from Rich Wisniewski, who's one of my regular operators and part of the brain trust, like James mentioned, of trusting other people to help with parts of the operation is a huge piece of what we do. So a little bit of paperwork like that, I think, is really, really important with some maps and such. And then the other thing we developed over time was this, which Marty and again Gordy will be familiar with. But this is the remote operating procedures, which is just, again, I did it in Microsoft Word. A couple guys proofread it to make sure it was readable by someone that didn't build the layout, because we're blind, I think, to some of our own assumptions on the layout. And it's a rock to hold on to for someone that is taking the jump to operate on someone's layout for the first time. No one wants to crash the Super Chiefs. no, no one wants to be the person that has a derailment on someone else's layout. I'm like, but guys, that's the beauty of operations. My trains are not on a shelf. If they break, we'll figure out a way to fix it. But yeah, you don't want to be that guy. It's true. So having some paperwork, I think, is a big piece of sort of gluing that together. And I wanted to ask that question to Daz, because you've got you're approaching it in sort of a different way. So correct. Have you gone into the paperwork at all yet, or is that still something you're playing with?
No, that's something I'm sort of just dabbling with now. I've just recently finished my layout proper, the track work. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm just I've got a friend coming around physically that we're actually still ironing out a lot of bugs within the layout, because I think that's another thing we need is rock solid bulletproof track work and electrical systems. Because train controller, Marty will be able to point out, and also Andy Ambrose, who runs train controller, it all stems around block occupancy of some description. So I'm going in a little bit different way. So my operating session is I'll be able to literally set a train going from point A to point B automatically if I wish to create bridge traffic that will set all the points, set all the signals, and set all what they call within train controller collision avoidance systems. So it's a lot harder to run trains into each other effectively. Even if you are controlling what I call a manual train on my layout, I still have one level of security on it that I still, if you come up to a red signal and the system's not sensing that you are slowing that train down, it'll stop you. It'll stop the train.
You've got the American version of precision scheduled railroading is already on your layout.
So that's obviously the next part of it. So, but with that comes cost. Obviously, JMRI is a free, obviously more coding, but train controller, as Andy would know and Marty would say as well, it's a very expensive piece of software. But I'm time poor. I don't have the coding skill. For me, it works, and I think moving forward, it's probably what I see is that from the paperwork side of things, I'm dabbling with some waybills and switch lists and all that, which would be very easy to put up on a Google Drive or something like that someone can access before. Because I've also developed for my system, which is obviously not an automated thing, is a barcode system. So I've got back of each one of my car cards is a barcode for that individual wagon, and that I populate my switch lists out that way, and that's obviously easily saved and then put onto a drive that a remote person could access if needs be.
What we're working on to take it one step further is RFID. All my wagons have RFID tags.
Awesome. Yeah.
And cool. That feeds directly into JMRI operations. I haven't got it feeding into train controller yet. And the theory is that these RFIDs do not just identify the vehicle passing over, but they're also point detectors to back up the I use MCE BD20 track circuit detectors or the ERDOT infrared detectors to give you a complete picture of where on the layout everything is. But,
I think the RFID, that's a great new initiative, and there was an article in Model Railroader, I believe, a few years ago about that. I think Seth Newman may have been involved.
Yeah.
To some degree out by James.
Yeah, Seth. There's the two primary systems on the market, and that's Seth's system and Train Tracks, which comes from Carlton Brown in Texas.
Okay.
The beauty of the RFIDs, which will come in future, is you can write data into them. So there's some systems now where they're looking that you don't just have an ID for the car, but you can write the consist. You can tell what's loaded, whether it's unloaded, it's half a load, where it's actually got to go, which makes things a little bit more interesting then for ops, whether you're picking up empties or whether you're picking up.
Right. I mean, that's something that we do now in the Onondaga cutoff. We do that manually. So we have a, not that you can read it. This is small stuff, but my best buddy Jack, who's the one who helped me put the whole thing together, came up with a car forwarding plan, which is just Microsoft Excel and then him working through it. It helps when you're a rail service planner. You can do stuff like that. Not me.
At work as well.
I don't actually operate my layout. I don't know if you guys know that. I build it, and they all come. But I think so it can be done manually. But I think what Andy's doing is pushing the edge of the technology, using these new systems. And yes, you've got to do more wiring, and there's a little more programming involved. But there's a heck of a lot less paperwork between sessions, because the RFID system and JMR operations can take care of that in one fell swoop, especially if you build your layout with that in mind. So that's a great point, Andy. I'm glad you brought that up.
I follow Daz to the point of view that it's time v money. How to buy a train controller, it's only effectively 45 hours of wages, although it is expensive. can I learn JavaScript and Python in 45 hours and program JMRI up? And answer no. That's why I've gone with train controller. Even with the RFID, the clever stuff has been done by Carlton Brown, and all I just have to do is program my tags and add where on the layout the detectors are, and so on and so on. And you can use the detectors for that as part of your track circuiting indicators, and you can also use them as Daz uses other detectors to run auxiliaries. So, for example, as a train comes into the station, it triggers one of these detectors, and the Traintronics LCD screen puts up on the display what train it is and where it's come from, and so on and so on. There is no end to this. This will go on and on. And
now, Andy, your job for the end of the week, I'd like to know how I'm going to get that into train controller. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I got both train controller and I use JMRI a lot, but I see them being used in two totally different areas. Like if I've got an open house here and I just want to have trains running, I'll have train controller run it, because it can run some trains, it can stop them at stations, it can do all of those functions, and it'll do it automatically without anyone having to monitor it. If we're having an ops session here, well then JMRI gives us all the tools to run a physical op session, whether it's a remote op session or one with people in the actual room itself. So I see JMRI being used for physical op sessions and remote op sessions, and then train controller for when, we have an open day or whatever and people are coming around and just looking at the layout. Or you just want to sit there and have a whole heap of trains run without you having to, control every one of them.
Whilst you eat your sandwich.
Well, I eat my sandwich, yeah.
See, that's where I'm using train controller because I'm stubborn, I suppose. I've been very lucky. I'm working with a gentleman in Germany to help me program this as well, because it does require a little bit of programming, but it's more of a visual program, as Marty and Andy can point out, where we're trying to make our own dispatch panel as well within train controller, which has been rather problematic which is we're trying to model a little bit like a CAT system, I suppose, which I think is my understanding runs parallel with JMRI. I know Peter Borchers, he's one gentleman that uses the both. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's my next level to input into a remote ops that, once I get it into up and running, I think the dispatch side of things as well will start. So that individual will start the trains, and they can see as the train transversing through my layout, what routes it's setting, what points it's setting, and physically via some wizardry this gentleman's written into the program that what particular locomotive is in as a given position, and its DCC address, what functions it's got on, and everything in between. So that's what I'm using train controller for anyway. So
yeah, and it's great. There's different ways to do it. It's almost
correct.
I guess it's almost like looking at windows on the computer. Like if you're writing an MS Word document, there's 4 or 5 different ways to make the text bold. You can screen over it and right click and drag it. There's a little button up top. You could change the color. There's different ways to get to where we need to go, I think, with this stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
CATS, the CATS, which is the Crandic Automated Traffic System by Rodney Black, that was instrumental for the Onondaga Cutoff, because that was a ready-to-go format into which you could build your dispatcher screen to mimic the 1980s, 1990s American technology for that. So it's a template, right? There's other ways to do it. You can do it from scratch in JMRI, and a lot of the people like Tom Jacobs, those are familiar with his layout up there in Pennsylvania. He's been building it through Panel Pro, which is JMRI again, but he's been building the digital CTC machine where you can throw the little levers and bring that all together. So there's all different ways to go about it. But we on the Onondaga Cutoff, we started with remote dispatching. That was the impetus to get started with remote operations. That existed before the pandemic. Yeah. But it was the pandemic that forced our hand, because we all wanted to operate. There's people wanted to keep trying to run trains. and it was a real blow to the operations side of the hobby, which I think is one of the more dynamic and exciting parts of the hobby these days. And so, sure enough, like a lot of the people on this call helped to push that forward in the last 18 months. It's been very exciting.
Absolutely, and I think the thing is, it's like, how do you start? You can start by just remoting one of the roles. So I remote dispatch speeds layout. Now, normally the dispatcher sits inside the helix at speeds, but I remote dispatch speeds layout from Orkney, no problem with in-person crews. It works really well. I have no cameras. Just like a real dispatcher, I can see nothing. As we're adding block detection, I'm being able to see a little bit more where the operators are doing things I haven't told them that they can do. But and normally I can't see anything, and you'll hear, I've run into someone else, and it's like, well, you've not followed the dispatcher. And that's not because the dispatcher's remote, because in speeds layout, the dispatcher would be inside that helix anyway and couldn't see. So it's not like you need to have tons of technology and spend thousands of dollars here to enable your layout to be remote. I mean, mostly what you need to do is connect your command station to a computer, and then connect that computer to the internet, and you're done. You could even technically, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but you could technically have, if you have a dispatcher that's on your Wi-Fi network using a computer somewhere else to talk to the computer in the basement, even without going through the internet, just in a different part of your house, or as I think happened on Dave's first operating sessions, parts up outside of his house in their cars.
Yeah,
then,
we had the tailgate sessions.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. Yep.
Then you are technically doing remote operations, and it's no great leap from there to take it forward. And even at the moment, I'm about to acquire a set of Fremo modules that's a call branch, and my intention is to set that up for remote operations. But there was no bot detection in the 1940s, 30s and 40s on a call branch, right? Probably isn't any now. It's probably dark territory. So my dispatcher there is going to have to dispatch without any indication. They're going to have to do it in the old-fashioned way. They're going to have to get a train sheet, and people are going to have to OS as they go past different stations and stuff, if the station has an operator, and potentially the operation there for TT&O, for TT and TO, whatever it is, timetable and train order, you potentially could just have one fixed camera that could be a webcam or one of these IP security cameras for baby monitoring and stuff. Being as me and Dave have a young family, we're familiar with this technology.
Oh, I've got several in the basement.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Then
they get repurposed.
Yeah, and you're giving the operator in the depot or the tower the same view that the real operator would have if it was a real place and a real person. They see the train go past. That's all you need to say. Do I see the train go past? Is there a caboose on the back end of it, or is there a thread on the back end of it, or is there a signal? A red lamp and British stuff and Australian stuff on the back end of it? Yes, OS done. So it's I think sometimes when we can talk remote operations, we have a very bad habit of going into the too technical, because some of us get real kick out of the techie side of things, but it's really not a techie thing. It really isn't. It doesn't have to be. Let's put it that way. You can be as technical as you want.
And I think one of the keys here is that technical knowledge is available because the internet is here, guys. So the same medium we use to do some of these remote operations, drop us an email. Go over to my blog or take a look at Gordy's page. All of this stuff is out there. And if you jump on Facebook, you can jump into these groups. There's the groups.io, which is worldwide. I mean, I've gotten a lot of great information from the CATS page, CATS page, at the groups, or JMRI at groups.io. All of these resources, there are experts that are excited to help. I mean, guys like Ken Cameron at JMRI, he's helped with all sorts of parts of the Onondaga cutoff. He's never been here. He's never seen it. He's never operated it. So
and if the exactly, Dave.
There, and you can start. I think the layered approach. It's funny, with the signal book, we talk about the layered approach to signaling. It's the same idea, I think, with remote operations. Gordy's an excellent point, because you can set up one camera at one part of a timetable train order layout, and then that person is the operator for that station, and they can telephone the dispatcher, who can be sitting in the basement or any place, and say, OS Stillwater, you're the tower agent. You tell the dispatcher which train went by, marker was clear at this time. And so that's technically a remote operation. So there are pieces you can do. You choose one spot to start, and the ball starts to roll. I agree, Gordy. It's a very good point.
I operated your layout, and I've never seen it. I've never been in your basement, so I had to buy this book in order to see more of the layout.
Yeah,
Right.
we all ended up buying it.
So
Yeah, we've all got
everybody,
that,
if you don't already have this book, I suggest that you get it, because it's some
I'm
great
waiting for my
pictures of
signed
the
copy.
layout.
You
Waiting
guys
for the
are-
signed
you guys are
copy.
too much.
And
I am so grateful for the opportunity to contribute, of course, but Kalmbach did an awesome job laying it out, and I had some experts read it, and they chewed it up and spit it back out, and it sounds more like me than it did when I wrote it. I'm so fortunate, but you're a pickle, Gordy. I wasn't going to do that.
So I mean, I suspect that in a few years' time, Kalmbach will be coming back round, and we'll be having a book on remote operations, and the OpSig will be having books on remote operations, and LDSig will be having stuff on designing layouts for remote operations. It's a whole new direction for the hobby. It's not going to replace anything. We're still going to have in-person stuff. People are still going to have layouts that go out to shows. People are still going to do T-Track. But hey, think of it this way: even if you're doing a T-Track layout at a big show and you're struggling to get enough people to go to it, well, if you connect that remotely, you can have your members who may not be able to attend the show run the layout for you while they're not there, and it's huge opportunities for people. It's like any technology in it. I mean, or any concept comes along, and then it's like, okay, well, how can we absolutely maximize the benefit of that and all the potential uses of that particular idea or product.
At Silicon Valley Lines, to come back to the going away issue, we're definitely not making this whole remote operations thing go away completely, because California is getting ready to reopen in about 3 days at this point, and we decided basically really early on that even if we were to open like a month after we started all of this, we were still going to keep it around, because if you think about it, all your regular remote operators come back to the layout. What if one of them's out sick, or they have a child and they have to stay home, or they're camping somewhere where they have really good internet? Because in California you can find a bunch of those KOAs and whatnot. I think you can find those all over the place, where you have really good internet at this campground way out in the middle of nowhere.
Can you imagine remote operations where it's raining outside? So when it's raining on the layout, you put all your operators outside and you let them operate in the rain. It's just like the real thing, guys. It's just like the real thing.
James had an operator remote operating from camping up a mountain in New Zealand, where he's sitting in his camper doing it, didn't we, on the last open house?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, it's just, Gordy's right. It's a whole new avenue to grow the hobby, and I think it's going to show people that this is not, an old layout where you have the old transformer necessarily. Our hobby, people that are taking operations seriously with DCC especially, but also with battery power and with remote control, we've pushed the envelope, and very few people outside the hobby know about it. Mm-hmm. They still think it's 1950, with a line LZW, and that has its place. It's a lot of fun. In fact, I just put a blog post up because the woman that sort of opened my eyes to three-rail operation with my buddy Jack was an orphan layout. So if you're interested, onondaga.cutoff.blogspot.com. If you just Google Onondaga Cutoff, it'll pop up. I've got a whole story about a three-rail layout. That's where I learned operations. Ironically, was on a three-rail layout with an old ZW. So there's different layers to it. But I think that what this new avenue is going to show us for the hobby is that there's a bunch of people who are used to their phones who now are going to say, wait, I can run your layout from my phone? And I can do that from anywhere? That's awesome. That's fantastic. And suddenly model railroading really becomes a much more universal hobby when you can do something else cool with your phone. Yeah, you can trade stocks, or you can watch videos, or you can write an email or text or make a phone call, or you can open your garage door. Well, now you can run trains. And it's just another part of this continuum. It's definitely getting better.
Oh, yeah.
It's an exciting time.
The technology is going to improve. I tell you what, Brad, have you had a look at the YouTube feed, there's a couple of juicy questions there. I think we could chuck out there.
Okay, well, you go ahead and ask whichever one you'd like out of those juicy questions.
Okay,
you're right, there is a lot there.
There's one there from LGRFBS. Now, this chap joined us last night, and he's in Sweden. So, and he's asking, has anybody had any experience with Rockrail? There's another software package out there called Rockrail, other than Train Controller or using JMRI. And I guess if anybody had, it would probably been Dazzy, because he's the European.
European. I have heard of Rockrail. My understanding it is, please quote me if I'm wrong out there, sort of to line up with the Roco side of things. I'm not 100% on that. I know there's a gentleman, Marklin from Sweden, I think runs Rockrail. He's got quite a big YouTube channel out of Sweden, obviously. But I've never personally actually used that piece of software, no.
It looks, from the pricing he's given there, it looks like he's got $10 per year by the looks of it. So it looks like it's a subscription type one. But
right,
I tried it, but it was many years ago. I think probably in the 1990s, when I went through a whole bundle of different softwares, trying them out, and one of the ones that I thought was the best one at the time was actually an Australian package called Solid State Interlocker by Graham Plowman. But that seems to have sort of disappeared off the market. So I went for Train Controller, and the other one, Railware, are probably the most powerful, where you don't need to learn all the programming. Dazzy's done some amazing things with his. I mean, he's even done automatic uncoupling, where Train does a little shunt, and well impressed with that. And
I would have put K-bit over the top of that. It's not actually my code, but yes, I've done that on my layout.
That's awesome. Super cool.
Yeah, I mean, with a whole different, we are running out of time, and it's a whole different conversation about remote coupling, because there are DCC controlled couplings that are out there available on the market with servo control and stuff, and also with the I can't think what it's called now, with like the magnesium strips and stuff, and the wire stuff.
Andy there is he sent us some of those muscle wire couplers, and you have to be careful with those things because they're about $30 each and really easy to burn out. And I burned out 2 of them.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a sign of the direction that we're going. There. It's like, these aren't horn hooks, right? It's a sign of the direction that we're going, all right? It's not fixed magnets either. It's uncoupling anywhere that you want. MTH have those on their HO locomotives already, but obviously you want to be able to split a train in the middle. But go on.
No, you're all right. Go on, finish off.
I was just going to finish by saying that anyone that wants to look at Rockrail, it's ROC Rail.
Yes.
And if you put that into the Google machine on the internet, it comes up and there's a wiki page all about it. Apparently you can download it for free. I don't know where the licensing comes in. You'd have to look into that in more detail, but it's got some screenshots, links to forums. It works on Linux and Windows and Raspberry Pis and all sorts of stuff. So.
And there's one other comment that came in here from, I think it's Benjamin, and he was talking about our RFID systems, and you talk about things that are going to happen in the future. But he was suggesting that maybe you could actually blockchain the RFID info and send it from layout to layout. I know there's some guys in New South Wales that run the Werris Creek line, and it's 3 separate layouts. And they manually run trains from one end to the other, and they meet in the 3 different layouts each week. And they just bring their trains and their rolling stock, so that now they're at this point and they're going to move up the layout. But he's talking about doing it remotely. I could have a layout here, and I could pull a train in and send that consist to Dave in New Jersey, and then that would appear in his rolling stock or his Reiki cars there. So that's the kind of future that this thing can bring on.
Dave just needs to be very careful there that those broad gauge locomotives that you run down in Victoria don't completely destroy his point work. Right, there could be some significant damage to flangeways if you try to run 5-foot stuff
You
over
know,
that.
if you ran one of those Russian prototypes where they detruck the cars and put them on,
Yeah.
Hey, there's a prototype for everything.
Hey, don't laugh, Dave. They used to do that in Victoria up till not so long ago. Yep.
Look,
anyway,
I know we all could talk for hours and hours here because this is something that really interests all of us. But I'm going to put one last question out to us. About 12, 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, we all kind of put a big push forward to do some remote ops stuff. And it all sort of kicked off from there. And we're up to this point now. If I was going to put a stake in the ground today and say what's going to be the future, what are we going to push ourselves to do for the next 6 to 12 months? What's some of the ideas that you all have? And I'm going to go to James and Dave for this because they're at the forefront.
My big thing is, I think the next thing we'll see is the remote switching. Even if it's only one engine doing one car shunts at a time from, in a little switching puzzle. I think that's the thing that we're figuring out next, now that people are starting to see those remote uncouplers show up. At least that's where I would like to see it go, because I see that being the next big thing.
And I will actually piggyback on that, and I think what's going to enable that is more readily available and maybe even manufacturer installed cab cameras. Because the way forward for most people in remote operations, especially if you've got signaled layouts, and I think that's the way the hobby's going too. I mean, more and more prototypes have signals, more and more people are familiar with it. And so here we go. I mean, we're working on a prototype here. Look, James is obviously holding one up there that he's working on where you have the camera installed. Hey, scale trains, Rapido.
Yeah.
I would pay $100 more for a couple engines on the layout to have a camera inside with Wi-Fi enabled, ready to go. The camera goes on the layout, you program it for DCC, and the Y throttle, and it has its own little transmitter like an SLR does, and it can talk to your router so that you get that in time. Then you can switch. Then you can do. I mean, then the signals, you guys. Then you wouldn't even need the dispatcher screen. All you need to run my railroad is a throttle to join the Jitsi call, or we've even gotten away from Skype because you can do it through Jitsi now, where I just have the layout computer on the Jitsi as a separate computer. So one of the screenshots, instead of people's faces or a train, is the dispatcher screen, and people can toggle back and forth as they need. But you've got right on your device, you can watch your train. It's just so I think if a manufacturer steps in and starts to create a commercially available additional price for those of us that want to take the plunge, I think there's a market there for that, and I think that's only going to grow. So I'm hoping that the in-cab camera becomes a bigger thing in the next 6 to 12 months.
One thing that they need to make sure to do is make it where it's system agnostic. Like with the Raspberry Pi, they just transmit to an IP address or a URL. It can't be locked down like the Rocco thing, where I believe you have to have Rocco.
That's right. Yeah, you gotta have the Z21 system. So
you gotta have those. But ultimately, right, manufacturers in the rest of the world are already doing this. I think Lionel are looking at bringing this in O scale, and it really is time for people to put their big boy pants on and put this technology into the mainstream. I mean, if you buy a locomotive from Roco in Germany, sound is just standard. Smoke is the extra at the moment, and cameras is the extra on top of that. Whereas in the States, it's still very much DCC ready, DCC non-sound, and DCC sound. And now it's like the world is going to move on in 5 years' time.
It's time. It's time. I agree.
I think in 5 years, the next thing we'll see is probably N scale with the small cameras and stuff. We're not really there yet. Even the smallest, like ESPs, they're a little bit outside of the gauge and whatnot, but I think that will be the next move down into N scale.
Cool.
We're getting there, but not quite.
Look, I think Brad needs to wrap it because we're
pretty much running out of time. I know we can talk for hours, and tell you the truth, I think NMRAx is going to have to get all us back on board, and we can start to look into depth in how this stuff goes on. All these people have probably got their juices flowing, and there's been some great ideas that have come out of it, like the idea of Martin having 3 different layouts across the world where we can move trains is just kind of mind-blowing at this stage, and I reckon someone needs to implement that, and I want to be part of it. So, thanks
You and me
guys
both.
for joining us, and I'll definitely be in touch to arrange an NMRAx clinic. Okay,
Sounds
so
good.
we'll cut to some ads, and I believe we may have someone from the North Pole doing a clinic straight up.
Yeah, I believe someone from a rock in the middle of the Atlantic is going to teach us how to do track planning.
Alright, catch you soon.
Bye.
They
all.
are.
Okay, welcome back, guys. As you can tell, that panel show was exciting. It got everyone thinking and keen for some remote ops, I hope. So in the future, I dare say we'll definitely have some information on that topic. But leading on to something along the same sort of lines, something new. It's a little bit, what do I say, not so hands-on. It's a bit computer-generated. We've got a great clinic coming up here. This is a man some know as the president-elect to the NMRA. Others know him as the man living on the rock of the North Sea. My kids think he's just Santa's next door neighbour, to tell you the truth, so I don't know really what's going on there. Yeah, okay, cool. He's the boss man of NMRAx. By the way, Gordy, actually, I'm still waiting on me paychecks for the last 12 months of work for you. So,
Oh, they bounced.
really?
They bounced, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Damn. Look, with no further ado, I welcome Gordy Robinson with a clinic on NMRAx.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody. I hope you've all been enjoying the convention. So this is kind of a bit unscripted. It's more of a demo of AnyRail, which is a piece of software you can use to design your layout. It's free to download. There is there is a demo version that is the free to download version, and then there's a commercially licensed version. I'm showing you the commercially licensed version. You can do everything in the demo that you can do in the commercially licensed version. It's just that you're limited to 150 components, and the license is it's a one-off license, and I think it's about 40 euros. So it's not a huge amount of money. But this is a really cool piece of software. There's so much here for me to show you that I am not going to have time to do it. But if there's anything specific that you want me to show you as we go, then put the comments in the chat and Brad will interrupt me and I'll go off and show you that particular piece that you might be struggling with. There are other software planning tools available that are more CAD based. I like this one because it's kind of a good middle ground. There's a lot of components in here that already exist, so you don't need to draw them up. And there's also a few features which I'll show you where users submit their own structures where they've drawn them up themselves in the program and saved it as an item and said this is Wolfer's depot, or this is a whiskey model, something or other, and then they you can use it as well. So it's all shared. It's a whole forum within the actual application. But track planning itself, just a few things. The reference. One of the most important things to do before you come to actually draw out, just randomly draw something out, is get yourself some track planning materials, some kind of inspiration. This is a really old book, but it's a very good book. And you can go out and draw and use this software. Because you draw into scale, you will probably find that certain people track plans, Ian Rwys being one in particular, don't fit very well with standard track components because they're designed for handmade turnouts and stuff like that. And in AnyRail, you can't really do that, but it does include quite extensive libraries. So when you load AnyRail, you will see straight away what we call the work area. And really, this isn't the baseboard, or it can be if that's what you want to do. I don't recommend that. This is the entire room is what you're really wanting to go for here, of where you're putting the building. Unfortunately, it can only be a square or a rectangle, but I'll show you some ways that you can put things in to block it out. So the first thing we do is we go over to our settings page, and starting from left to right, you see it's all very much like Windows, and you can tab through these tabs, but go over to settings, and then you have measurement systems. So there's 4 real options, metric and imperial. You have centimeters, millimeters, fractional and decimal inches. I cannot work in fractional inches, so we're not going to do that. We'll stick it with decimal inches for now, although this is Australia, so maybe we should do millimeters, eh? We'll do millimeters, all right, for you guys. So immediately, the observant amongst you will have noticed that these numbers changed now to be whatever they were set before, but now they've converted to millimeters. So if I just go back, I'll show you that again. Decimal units, this is 54 inches by 10 on a grid, 2-inch grid. Don't know what that's a new feature they've put in. I don't know what that is. It now converts over to millimeters. And so there's a few things that we can set. You can track plan in any gauge. So where you set your minimum radius, you need to adjust that if you're going to be track planning in N scale, and now you're track planning in HO. I strongly recommend that you change that. All that does is if you put a tight radius in anywhere that's tighter than that, it puts a nice big red line over that track section. And I guess we'll show you that in a little while. You can also define maximum slopes. You can set what the minimum vertical clearance is between tracks, so you can just build up. You're building up off a flat sheet, just like a 3D print, and you can have multiple minimum radiuses. You can have your track auto connect or not. Auto connect just means when it's 2 pieces close together, they snap. I'll show you that in a minute. I just leave it like this as a standard thing, and you can have snap to grid if you want, but then it adds on lots and lots of little grid lines. It's up to you. I don't really go for snap to grid because the real thing doesn't snap. The real railroad doesn't snap to a grid. So once we've got our work area, so we'll set something up. Brad, give us a work area you want me to work with.
A work 2.4 by, I don't know, 900.
All right, so as we can see, we need to zoom out a little bit. So just go to, we'll just sort that out just a sec. zoom it out. Okay, so now that's a 1:8 size. It doesn't really matter, but there you go. So that's a nice work area for us to work with. So the first thing we need to do is put in some bench work, right? So this is the size of our room or shed, and let's say we're going to just put in some bench work. Let's say it's going to be 1800 mil wide, and we're going to go for 300 mil high, and we go add a rectangle, and you just click. And there we have some bench work, and we can put that wherever we want in the room. Job done. We can also use these shapes to block out areas of the room that we can't use. So like, I don't know, Brad's boss's sewing area, so we can just drag the corners here, and we can say, right, Brad, that's how much of the layout, that's how much space in this room you've got for your layout. Tough. It's just tough. Or we can just select it and delete it, and we'll go back to doing something proper, and it's retained our settings, so we can add it in. Okay, so now we can see how our layout's going to fit. We can move it from this side, we can move it around in the room. You can mark off where the doors are going to be. So if we want to mark off that there's a door, say, in the corner of this room, what I would go in and do is put in a radius. So a radius of a door is usually 838 mil. Put that in. It's quite big. That's not the radius, is it? It's 400 and odd. Silly boy. So we'll make that 400. And there we go. And then we can just drag this in and nicely square that up. Don't worry that it's off the page, because if we ever actually come to print this, that won't be there. So we've blocked off that whole area for a door. Okay. So then with our shape, once our shape's selected, you'll see that this new tab appears that isn't there before, called our surfaces. We can do lots of things. We can glue it, which if you decided that's where it's going, that's probably a good thing to do. So now it's glued in place, it won't move. We can elevate it, so we can say that this is at a certain height. Currently, we're all just modeling this on the flat. And we can bring things forward and turn things back just like you would do normally. What I like to do is come in and give it a line width. So that's 1 millimeter. Always remember, every unit is millimeters. It doesn't tell you what unit it is. You change that in the settings page. So if we say that is 10 millimeters on the line, and there we go, we have a 10 millimeter line. So we don't want to put anything in the layout closer than a centimeter from the edge. And then this is the transparency. So if we want to just clear that off so that we've got just a square, shows us where our bench work is, but we can see the grid underneath, then we can do that, and we can't move this. See, it's glued. So it's stuck. Okay. But as you see, that's disappeared as I select it. And I can see it again. And then we have some other things that you can do with it. You can round points and stuff like that. So at the moment, that's now rounded on the corners, which is great. Or I can just take it off, and now it's not. So the other thing is you can save this as an object, or you can load an image into that space. There's lots of things you can do here, but we're not really needing them for this little session. So we've got our bench work. What we want to do next is some track. So I've got this currently set so that there is only HO and N. If I go to options and go to libraries, you can see these are all the libraries that are available. So if you want to do G scale, gauge 1, S, OO, TT, standard gauge, which is still gauge 1, gauge 2, 1:1, whatever, you have these selected. And what this will do if you deselect them is it'll filter all of your tabs so that where you've got track or objects, it's only going to show you as HO, N, and 1:1 size.
So, Gordy, just quickly while you're on track there, we've got our first question in the
Yeah.
chat from Al. Does it allow for provisions for fast track points?
It does allow fast tracks, yep. So if we go here, we can see all the manufacturers. There's fast tracks. And for HO scale, you've got HO, HON3, HO and HON3, which is dual gauge, and HON30. And these are all, what's noted here where it says minimum length is, when you download a fast tracks template, it'll say, here's the minimum cut lengths. So that's what it's doing. It's shrinking it down to the smallest space possible for a fast tracks turnout. So you need to remember to put flex either side of that to make that a bit bigger if you're doing the full size fast tracks. And the same with N scale.
Yep.
Same with N scale here. You've got N and you've got NN3, and if you click on there, you've got all of the different sizes there. We can make them smaller or bigger. You can have a part number, or you can have a description. So you can have it described to you exactly what that is. It's 138.9 whatever mil number 8 right turnout, or you can just have the part numbers, which is generally easy for fast tracks because it's just Y or a whatever, left hand or right hand turnout.
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
Cool. So so to get into just doing some track planning, or you can use what this will allow you to do. And the one limitation I would say with any rail is that it will allow you to connect track of the same gauge together. So it will allow you to connect a dual gauge turnout to standard gauge flex track if you want to. So you need to just be careful. It will also allow you to connect code 55 to code 100. It has no concept. It's just going to assume that you're going to up the road bed so that the rail head is at the same height. Okay. So just be very wary of that. It's particularly doesn't normally cause trouble until you're working with something like Unitrack, where there are certain Unitrack pieces that you don't want them to go together because you've got the road bed underneath. And so those pieces physically won't plug together. A number 4 turnout is a classic for this, that they have a special piece you need to put in on one side of your number 4 turnout so that the road bed doesn't stop it from clicking together. So we'll just go with something simple like Pico. Oh, sorry, it's Roco, Pico. And we can pick, you can see all the different things we can pick. So we're just going to go for the code 83 because that's what people are most familiar with, I think. And show you a few of the features here. So we'll start with flex track. I suppose really because I'm assuming most people are going to use flex track. If you want to use, as briefly, I should have probably gone here first. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you go the unscripted. You can use code 83. So these are Atlas code 83 set track pieces. When we select those, that you can see the options that we have here. We can create a helix, but when we right click on these, just a few things you'll notice. We can't chop them up. We can't cut up these set track pieces. They're set. Whereas when you select a piece of flex track, you have these options here where you can smooth the flex, you can add a parallel piece of flex, you can do straight or curves, and I'll show you all these in a second. So you can use set track. Set track's great for making helixes, and we'll cover off helixes if we have time today because it's something that people struggle with at times. But yeah, let's just forget that for a minute. So we're back to Pico, to flex track. So what you can, there's various different things you can do with a piece of flex track. If you select the end, you can wangle it all over the place. The reason I just did that into a nice S-curve is now you can see we've got them red lines. That means that the minimum radius is too small to what you set. Remember in the settings here, you came in and set the minimum radius. Now it's quite generous for HO there, but we'll leave it as it is. So if we click back onto our track, so you can move it that way. You also have these 2 points of reference, which is the point of radius. You can move those as well to move it around. And as you can see, you can bend flex track into shapes it really isn't going to go into. So that's like kind of the hockey stick shape. It is not going to go into that. And you can move it around whatever way you want. And now, like, oh, we can extend that. Oh dear, we need to extend that. And see, it's moving where the point of inflection of the radius is to minimum. Oh, we're really not going to recover that unless we go like that and make it more straight. But that's a really pants way of doing it. It's very freehand. I wouldn't recommend it. We'll just delete that for now. Get a new piece of flex track, always orientated horizontally. And now we'll show what the difference is with these features. So if I know I want a piece of flex track that's 600 mil long because I know how many bits of rolling stock I want on that spur, then I just enter 600. I go to straight flex, enter 600, and now I have a perfectly straight, rigidly straight piece of flex track at 600 mil. If I want to cut that somewhere, I can go here and I can right click on the piece of track, and I now have these options of cut the flex. So I can cut it. So now I have 2 pieces. And the little white dot indicates that these 2 pieces are connected. I can select the white dot, and I have options here where I can add heights, add slopes. We've not got time to do that today, but I can add an isolator. So now we're starting to draw electrical circuitry onto our track plan, but I'll remove that isolator, I'll select it, I'll hit delete on my keyboard, and now those two pieces of track are actually not connected. So I can pick this up and move it away. And now what we can do with these shorter pieces is, if we said we really wanted to cut that at 300, if we click on it, I was pretty close. I was 1.5 mil out. So it's 301 mil long, that piece. I can now just make it 300 mil, and I can go and stick on this piece, which will be 298 something. Yeah, 300 mil. So now I have two perfectly straight pieces of 300 mil track. Okay. If you want to add a curve, you select your track, select curve flex, and now you can set the exact angle and radius of that curve. So if I wanted to do 10 degrees, because that's roughly what you're coming off at number 6 or number 5, and I wanted that to be 600 mil radius, that's what a 10 degree 600 mil radius curve looks like. And I think that's a little bit tight, so we'll do a 4-foot radius curve, and now you can see there's a 4-foot radius curve. So you can potentially draw here imperfection that you won't be able to do on your actual layout. It's, if you're like me. So we'll grab a turnout. We're going to pick a turnout. It's a left-handed turnout. It's the wrong way round. So we've got a few options of what we can do with this. We can, just like you would be familiar with a Microsoft product, you can get your rotate tool and you can rotate it round. Do whatever you want with it. Just delete that and bring another one in, because these are always set perfectly when they come on. Or you can go up to here and do rotate. And now I can rotate it through 180 degrees, and I know it's exactly 180 degrees. Okay. Pop it onto there, and now see how that auto clicked together? That's not at 180 degrees anymore, because that piece of track wasn't. So we can undo that, and we can bring the curve piece down, get the blue dots, and just connect that together. Okay. And then we can bring this down and connect that together. And we started to draw things going off from a turnout. Now, if we wanted to just draw something freehand, like we are just going to do just now, like that piece of flex track's a little bit sharp. It's not very smooth, is it? So we can smooth that piece of flex track, and now we've got a beautiful sweeping curve. If we want to add a parallel piece of flex track that looks exactly the same, we can, and now that's exactly the same curve. So if you want to do, let me just get rid of that, go back to here. So if you want to do a parallel main line with exact perfect track spacing, you can do that quite easily, and it'll follow it perfectly. And so we want to move that back onto our baseboards because it's not really there. We can left click, draw a box, highlight all the pieces that go green, click on one of them with your left mouse button, and then now we're nicely moving those pieces of track so we can align them with the edge of the baseboard.
Okay, Gordy, before you keep going,
yeah.
sorry. There's a question in the chat here, and I think it's really great. I see you've got a huge catalogue of track that you can select there. Is it possible to load your existing set of track or individual pieces of track, say for Kato Unitrack, in there and draw down on that as you add this to your drawing, as you build your layout?
So you can, well, you'll find that most track is already loaded into here, so we can already pick up Kato Unitrack, if Gordy can find it, Kato, and we've already got HO Unitrack there, so all the different pieces are already there.
Okay, I'll explain it a bit better because that might be my misinterpretation. If I had 5 left-hand turnouts and 4 right-hand turnouts, and as I build it, is there a way that you can see how many you're using easily in a catalogue?
Absolutely. So there's a really cool feature here called Info. So if you go to File and you go to Info, you can download a list of materials, and it now tells me everything that I have got on here.
Okay.
And if you're using Flex Track, you can combine the flex or not combine the flex. So now it tells you exactly how many pieces of Flex Track you need to cut. Or you can combine it and it'll just tell you need to buy so many, minimum order. You've got 4 pieces of Flex Track on the layout, but you absolutely have to minimally, if you are an expert at cutting things exact, you'll need 3 units of track, 3 units of Flex Track, for example. Nice. And if we do Kato, it'll do it. And if I just go and show you, like, as if here's one I prepared earlier, this is a time saver layout. and if we just go to file and info on that, it's probably going to show us more material. So yeah, so it's showing you that you need to build three left number fours, four right, two number four rights, so two right, three left, and you need 7 pieces of flex track. It doesn't have to be fast track's flex track, as we all know. It's just flex track. Fast tracks don't really do flex track. So yeah, so that's all available to you quite easily. No, cancel. We'll
Okay,
come back to using you in a minute.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so just like I was showing you while I've got the Cato Unitrack up here, if you did have some Cato Unitrack and you wanted to include it, it will connect to will connect to your existing track. So if we were to just come in here and make those two blues, even though that's the wrong way around, it's going to flip it for me. And so now I've put in a Cato Unitrack piece. And we can continue with just playing with a little bit of Cato for just a second. I'm a little bit less familiar with HO Cato, but we'll make it work. And yeah, so we've got we're using up a few pieces of Cato here for whatever reason. Some bit bigger, no, 17. Where's the big pieces? Okay, whatever. So I can't find now the piece that I used, but I want to use another one of these. So you can highlight it, and you can use copy and paste and paste and paste as many as we want. Okay, and so now we've got loads of spare pieces, and we don't want those, so we just highlight them and delete them. All right, I'm gonna go off from track now. I think that's. Oh no, I said I'd show you helixes, didn't I? So quick one, helixes are always kind of used. I'm gonna get this and be really, really lazy. So with creating a helix, you can't do a helix with a straight piece of track because helixes are not straight. So the first thing you need to do is curve your track. So decide, doesn't matter about the angle, right? We can do 45 degrees. It really doesn't matter. It's just going to make your helix with pieces that are all 45 degrees long, 45 degrees curves. And then you want your radius. So really, well, not that big, but really, we're looking at like a 4-foot radius for a helix in HO. You've got to remember you've got the drag factor and stuff. And so that's what 40. See how it's not going to fit in the room though, Brad? You need a bigger room.
I need a bigger
You need
shed.
to renegotiate. You need to renegotiate this shed. All right, we'll go for 600. That's a bit tight, but it'll work for what we want. And now we can see create helix has appeared. And so when you click on helix, you set the start point and you can set the end point, and you can decide whether you want it clockwise or counterclockwise. So if we want our helix deck separation to be, let's say 450 mil, okay, it's going to work out now. If there's only one turn, that's an 11.9% grade, right? And it's red because we set what our minimum grade could be. So we said our minimum slope could be, I think, 3%. But you've got to bear in mind as well, if you set a minimum separation in terms of clearance, it will tell you whether there's enough clearance, but it does not allow for whatever you've got supporting your helix. So if you've got 6 mil ply underneath, you need to remember the 6 mil ply. If you've got road bed, you need to add that on. Any rail obviously doesn't know what that is. So if we can make this as realistic, like a 3.5 turn helix, it's now 3.4%, so 4.5 turns. Okay, so it's telling you it's 2.7%. The height per turn is 100 mil. Now you've got to add on, say, 20 mil for the supports underneath and the fact that you've got road bed and all that, or whatever, 30 mil. So it's only 70 mil. That might be okay. But if you're modeling double stack containers, as Brad does, that's going to skim off the top of those containers. So always got to have a little bit of thought in here. But for now, I think that'll do for us. We're doing transition era for the minute. And we just click, as simple as clicking OK, and boom, it's made us a helix that unfortunately doesn't fit in the room, but for demonstration purposes, it'll work. And you can see there's the top of the helix. It was a half-turn helix, so the bottom should be down underneath. I think it was half-turn anyway. And now if we go to that file and we go to info, I'll just show you that list of materials. Now that list of materials is continually growing. Remember, all measurements are in millimeters, but it kind of rounds it up to meters for some reason. But you can see now you need at least 21 pieces of flex track. So it's starting to grow and it's starting to get expensive. You can see the manufacturer's name is also there. It also includes the manufacturer's product ID, and then the component description is all there and everything. So it's very, very useful to export that, and you can save it and it'll you know, and you can print it off as a text document or as a PDF. You can also do an export as where you want to do that, but anyway, we'll stick with that for now. So I think it's do save.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah,
Gordy,
and
I'm
it's saving
glad
as
you're doing
text.
this clinic because I didn't think that the area that the wife let me in the lounge room have was going to be sufficient. So I'm glad I've got this for evidence.
Excellent. Whenever you want it. Right. So we're going to just get rid of that helix because track is one thing, but a few things you can do with the way globally to just display your track, as you probably saw up on my Blue Peter model that I just showed you. If you go to show, you have some options here of what you want things to look like. So you can have your track just looking at a center line. And remember, with any rail, you can print this off. So you can literally print off a center rail paper template on multiple sheets of legal or A4 paper, stick them down to your benchwork and lay your track right on the top if that's what you want to do. And you can make it exactly perfect. But center lines are actually pretty good for drawing electrical diagrams. So you only draw this once and then you can quickly just change the view and save it and print it or whatever. You can have just track, or you can have sleepers. So now you're starting to see the track formation, and then you can add the road bed so you can make sure that you've allowed enough room for the road bed. And stuff like that. So you can also show hidden track. You can select a piece of track and say, actually, that's hidden in a hill or whatever, and you can just do hide. I can't remember how to do it. But anyway, that's embarrassing, but never mind. Oh, it's up here. So you can just go up and hidden, and now that track is hidden. If we go to show and say, don't show hidden track, it's disappeared. And it shows you that there's something beyond there because that's a white connected dot as opposed to no white dot. But it's there. And so there's our hidden track back, and we can just adjust that back, make that standard, and it's done. You can also say that that's a bridge, so it'll draw some funky lines over it to make it look like a bridge. And you can also say it's embankment, so it's not a bridge, Gordy, it's embankment. There we go. And that was just drawn and marked off areas at the side of the track to say, well, realistically, you're going to have something sloping away there. So make all that standard. It just makes life a little bit easier. So that's kind of it really for track. Is there any questions out there in the chat for doing track on this?
No, I think you've covered them all.
All right, cool. So drawing the track layout is one thing, and a lot of software doesn't go much beyond this. But in any rail, you can start to actually add structures and scenery. And there's two different ways of that. There's what's called the object library and what's called user objects. And object library is stuff that's hard-coded into the system, and user objects are things that people have saved. So they've drawn in the system, they've saved it, and now it's available to all other users. Caveat in that, user objects, you need to check the dimensions, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, just to make sure that someone's not made a mistake when they've drawn it up. The stuff that's in here is a standard object library. You can tell it's very European because this is European software, but it's pretty accurate. So we can go to Wolfers HO structures. Not all of them are available in here. In fact, some of these are no longer on the market from Wolfers, but the one I always like to pick up is the Wolfers grain elevator, the concrete one, the big ADM plant. Everyone's pretty familiar with that. If you build that structure exactly how it is, then that's what it's going to look like, okay? And that's how big it is. And it takes up an awful lot of room. But you can move it around, place it, you can rotate it, you can even flip it if you want to. Oh, it won't let me do that. But you can rotate it around, do whatever you want with it, and there you have, a Wolfers standard structure, okay? But the user objects is really cool because this is a huge amount of stuff. There is an absolutely huge library here of stuff. It's in fact so big that they had to make sub-menus here. So you've got Clever Models, who are an NMRA partner. You've got the famous City Classics, and you can click on here. Now, unfortunately, someone's only drawn the route diner from City Classics, but there's the diner from City Classics, okay? We just drawn it straight on there. You can see there's a little bit more detail in this one than this one, but someone's just drawn that to give you the footprint. And then if you want to check it, obviously you would go to the City Classics website, check the size of the model, and then we can add some rulers to this. So we can add a rule just by clicking on ruler, add rule, For some reason, it's defaulted that it always starts at 500. And with anything in any rail, you can either set the specific length that you want, or you can just scroll it back and do whatever you want with it and use it to measure something. So we can place it on the edge of that structure, and we can measure it across here, and we can see that that structure is about 166 mil. That's not very straight, but about 166 mil long. If that is what the structure is according to your plan, then you're good, and you know that this object's okay, and you can be pretty confident that you can use that on your building. There are other user objects. There's lots and lots of things. Sorry, that's the Posty and his best mate. Just going saying hi to him there. There are lots of things here. There's end scale structures, and there's no limit. So if you want to do force perspective, and you want to put an end scale structure in the background, like probably over here, then you can. All right. And other user objects, there are some one-to-one size things. So you've got the DigiKeys blocks and stuff. This is more using these DigiKeys components for if you want to convert your diagram to be an electrical diagram to show how you've done the wiring and stuff, because you can draw lines and things in any rail that you can. But other world famous one-to-one items is you can have, right, so there's a Gordy. All right. So I really don't believe that this is their one-to-one human. All right. And maybe if you're an athlete, you look like that and you can fit. But if you want to guarantee that you have good aisle width on your layout, I recommend that you select the Gordy. All right. And you can use a one-to-one scale Gordy. And as you can see, it's all getting a bit tight. You can also, if you really want to, you can go to gordy.uk and you can have a Gordy in a Gordy shirt. But you can also stick my logo on your track plans. I strongly recommend that. It's always very popular. So yeah, you can do that for yourself. And if you want to buy a commercial license and use this software to draw track plans for other people, then you can do that, and you can add your own objects to the library so that you can appropriately protect your own designs. But yeah, so it's pretty much anything and everything. There's all sorts of stuff in here. Probably too much to go through, but if you're using it, there's this feature called download new items, and I think I added about 2,000 additional structures into my libraries today when I did the update this morning. So there's a lot of stuff in here. The question?
No question yet. Actually,
All right,
I do have a question. So all these libraries and that, it's a two-way street. It's peer-to-peer. I could draw it up and share it with you. You can draw something up and share it with me.
You would just share it with everybody, yeah. So if we go in and add just make this a little smaller, just bear with me. We go in and add that structure there, and we select it. You can see save object as, and then it's asking you to tell it what it is. So what scale is it? What is it? Is it scenery? Is it a structure? What is it? Who's the manufacturer? What's the part number? Bit of a description and who drew it.
Okay, cool.
And if you save that, then everyone will see a square that's 180 mil by 300. So we're not going to do that. But that's how it works. You can also load images. So if you've got an image from somewhere else, you can load it in and do whatever with it.
Okay, Gordy. We've got one question here in the chat. We've been viewing all this so far in 2D, all looking down at it. Is there a 3D view, or are you able to rotate this around?
There is a 3D view, absolutely. Let's just stick some stuff in there that might help us do a 3D view. I'm not promising, but let's just stick a structure and some Wolfers structures in here. These should be drawn up to be in 3D.
Someone didn't make their layout room big enough.
Yeah, this is terrible, Brad. This is terrible. But we'll just stick some random structures in here and hope that it kind of works. So yeah, once you've done your design, there's a few different things you can do. You can click on 3D view. Yeah, it's all flat. Oh well. So you can stick it in 3D view, and if you had a helix, so we might just draw that helix back in, shall we? We'll go back to 2D design view. That'll be cool. It'll look ridiculous, but that's okay. So if we just create a helix, just have an endpoint of 100 mil. One turn. Okay. So we've got a helix kind of over here. If we go to back to home, back to 3D view, and now you can see we've got this helix, and it's added all the structures around it, and now it's starting to build up a 3D layer. That's the quickest basic way that I can show it you.
Yep.
Of what that would look like. And there's things you can adjust here, the color of the track and all kinds of things, and you can take snapshots and do quite really cool 3D drawings here. Like if we just go back, I think if I actually show you putting in some scenery, so just general HO scenery like a tree, we stick that tree in there, then I'm not promising this is going to work either because I really don't use 3D too much, but you can set the height of that. Oh, small. Oh, look at that. We can set the height of those at 50 mil. And then if we go to, whoops, 3D view, yeah, it's hiding the trees for some reason. Oh well, that's a shame.
The idea's
So
there.
yeah,
We can see
the
it's
idea
still
is there.
working in
You
3D.
can do it. You can do it. And there's other things you can do as well. You can actually export. There's quite a few different things. So you can export your design to be a picture. You can export your design as a PDF. You can make it a 3D file, so you could actually 3D print your layout if you wanted to as a conceptual model. You can export it to Train Player, which is pretty cool because that means you can actually run trains on your layout. Train Player is quite cool if you want to just test a few things out, see how the switching moves would work. Is there enough room there for a locomotive and a freight car, whatever? Then that's what's a really good thing because it'll just do stuff to scale. You can also take it out and drop it straight into GMRI. I've got to be honest. I've tried that. I wasn't having much success with it. It was a lot easier to just draw the layout with the blocks in GMRI itself. But you can do that if you wanted to have a schematical diagram over the top of your panels, where you've got like the switch stand for 10 digital panels. Then you can get that straight out of any rail and do it that way. So it's quite powerful, really.
So it's a pretty good piece of software. Like from an armchair modeler or someone that's just getting into the hobby that doesn't have the room to build their layout, they could actually take their grand plan and operate a train on it and make sure that was all working, all from one drawing here.
Absolutely, you can, yeah, and it's such an easy piece of software to use. You can save different versions and iterate on top of them. You can put something together that's useful really quickly. So if we just flip over to this instead, and I'll just make this a bit bigger so we can zoom in. So there is the time saver plan. Everyone should recognize that on the online watching this. The John Armstrong time saver. It took me 5-10 minutes just to put this together this morning. You've got 2 cars there, more than three cars or more there, and there, 2 cars there, and 2 cars there. So it's pretty much the time saver. You can adjust it, but it's a small, shortened time saver. And yeah, it's really quick to do. And if you want to go to the fullest extent of what this would look like, here is like one I prepared earlier. Here's a copy of part of one of the designs I've done. It's not the final design, but it's just some idea changing that I've done for my own home layout. And you can add more detail into these as you want. What was important here with this is that I know the helix is going to fit in that space. I don't need to draw it. I just need to draw a circle to say that space can't be used by anything else. The helix is going in there. And so here you can see my layout where it's got the Wisconsin Southern over here and it's got the Wisconsin Central on the other side. It's not going to look like that anymore. It's changed again since then. But I actually started to draw in some furniture for the crew lounge, and we're all using Gordy's here. Look at the aisle width there for Gordy. Perfect. And so we can draw in furniture and other items that are in the room, doors. I drew a shape that's actually conforms to the outside of my room. Made my area a little bit bigger so I could put in some text. And then, just to show you some of the things you can do with this, if you want to print it off, you can print it to fit just on one sheet. And where's it gone? It's the moment that you've had something on your desk for weeks and now you can't find it. Never mind. Unless that's it that's fallen on the floor. There we go. I thought you heard this fall on the floor earlier. So you can print this off. So it's a guide. So you can go and get planning permission from the missus. Or it's something for you to work from. So you can print it off and say, that's how I add it. Go and pen over it what you want, changes you want to make, and then you can come into any rail and make those changes. But you can also use ratios to do the scale. So I can print this in 1:1. Now, this is now going to print off on 861 pages, okay? But that's going to give me my entire layout as it is. Now you're going to randomly get stuff there, but we'll just fit that back to one page. That would print it off in a way that I could place it down. Now, realistically, what you would want to do in order to do that and print it off is come along with your selection tool, which is just hold your left mouse button on somewhere, select all that area, and then copy and paste that into a new AnyRail plan, and just print off that one specific area so you're not wasting half of the Amazon rainforest. So if you look at my this is something that I drew up with some scenery for my AP scenery submission. You can see here I've drawn in where the scenery is. There's an overbridge there, some shrubbery, there's trees all the way along the back of this design. There's also sections that I've added, which is we didn't really touch on today, but I've added sections, which is important for me for plot detection. And you can see I've added this, and I've added in rulers so you can see the sizes. I've given the grid size and everything. It's got Gaudy UK logo on it, and it kind of indicates the overall area and gives you an idea of where the scenery is. But if I print that off, just that scenic section, I'm not printing off the rest of the room, because the print area is the area that you can see, if that makes sense.
Okay, Gordy, just quickly, I know we've covered a lot of stuff on the basics tracks and the construction of it. What about power and electronics? Is that something that's incorporated as well?
Yep, so absolutely it can be. So we'll just modify this, because I'll just actually zoom in on this and show you. That's probably easier. You can see here we've got these grey triangles. Hopefully they're grey. I'm colorblind. Yep. And that is indicating of an isolating section. So what you can do now is, if you want to do, I mean, I don't know what people do around the world, but generally in the UK, a center line diagram is what we do for power. Is you can come onto here and draw this, and if you wanted to, remember I did those user objects 1:1 like a DigiKeys thing, whatever. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for, but yeah, it is. So that's like we can make this a bit smaller, I think. Can I make this smaller? No, that's going to be really unwieldy, but never mind. You can modify the objects, so you can come here and modify any object that's in AnyRail, and you can kind of make it smaller or whatever, but anyway, never mind. We'll just group that together. So what I was trying to show you there is, here's a very, very big, annoyingly, these are all huge, but they're, okay, that's smaller. So let's say that was a power distribution module, right? And what I want to do is I want to show where I've put power to. You can just come in here and do add a line, and now you can start drawing your line. I've got wiring from here to here to here and to here, okay? Because your wiring doesn't necessarily, oops, just stop that line. Your wiring doesn't necessarily, as we all know, it doesn't necessarily follow the track plan. And so this is how you would start to draw up your electrical stuff. So we've got, again, a line going to be from here to here to here to here and into point number 2. Double click to finish the line, okay? But if we've got our command station, we'd have a line going to the other track. So that's how you start to draw up your wiring diagram. If you want to remove all those connectors, you can do that by just coming in and removing connectors, removing endpoints, control points, track control points. No, where is it? Okay, there you go. They've gone. Wherever it was I pressed, they've gone. And now you can see that we've managed to remove all those connected. I'm sure it's connect. Is it endpoints or is it connectors? control points. It's control points. So if you remove control points now, you can see that you've got those lines, and it now like looks all tidy and stuff like that. So that's how you can do electrical, and you can start by doing sections. Whoops, clicked on the wrong thing. By doing sections, you can start to show where the sections are. There you can see there's an isolation point, so it knows it's disconnected from there and there, and all the different colored sections are showing me my power districts or my blocks. Okay, so it's just depends how complex your network or system is. You can draw this up, and you just keep saving it. So you save it as electrical drawing. You can save it as block detection design. And I would recommend that you do this, and you do these into AnyRail, and output them as PDFs or images, and save them on your computer. Potentially even print them off and put them into a folder somewhere, so you've got them for reference with your layout. And rather than being a pencil drawing or anything like that, you can even add labels. So I know Marty has a label machine that can print a label and stick it round a piece of wire. So you can insert some text here, and you could say block B for block 23. Okay, and we could add that, put that next to that line, and then we could say here block and then put next to this line, and just double click on that to edit it and say that's block 22. And so now you can label all of your wires on your layout, and they would match your diagram. So you're labeling everything as you go. Does that help?
That helps. That helps. So just we're coming near the end of this time slot here, Gordy. So just to recap, this is a free bit of software, correct?
There is a free version, yeah, which limits you to 150 pieces.
Okay, so out of the 150 pieces, what are you actually limited to? Is that something that they determine, or is this something that you are limited to what you actually put onto your drawing?
Yeah, so there's 150 things you can put on your drawing.
Okay.
In the free version. Now, if you want to design a time saver layout or a switching layout, small modules or whatever, then 150 is going to be fine for you.
But I could choose anything out of any of their libraries as long as it's limited
there's no
to
limit.
150.
There's no limit. There's no feature limit, so you can do all the exporting. You can take your file to train, file player, whatever you want to do. But as soon as you've got more than 150 pieces of anything on the layout or on the drawing, it'll cap you and say you've exceeded it. Now, to be honest, I have drawn thousands of track plans on this software. It is the most fun thing to use. It's so easy. It's snap and drop. The €40 license fee is a one-off fee. It's less than a freight car, and you get all the upgrades with it. So as it upgrades and they do different versions, you'll get the upgrades and the new features, and they're constantly adding new features to it. So I really think that, yes, it's free, and I'm all for people getting the benefit out of free stuff, but I really think it's worth buying the license once you've played with it. And but in terms of getting started and getting going and drawing things, drawing modules or drawing sections of your layout, it's 150 pieces per file. So if you draw your layout in 4-foot sections, you could do the whole thing in AnyRail and never have to pay the license fee. But because I'm using this to educate you guys, and I use it for track plans for people, even though I don't charge anyone for track plan, you can see there at the top it says license to me. So, it's a license.
So it's also more than just a track planning for the current layout you're building just to lay your track, isn't it? Like, this is very versatile. You could use it for your AP program, correct? You've got your electronics and all that sort of stuff in there. Absolutely.
I've used this software to draw up everything that I have submitted for my civil, scenery, and electrical, to show block diagrams and all kinds of stuff. And I haven't really got that just right to hand. Well, maybe I have. If we can just witter for a minute, I can pull up my submission for my electrical and show you some of the diagrams that I did.
I might have to get hold of this, and I can start doing a track plan here, and maybe in 11 years' time I'll actually get the track down.
You might have more than foam. No, I was thinking the same thing. This software seems like there's a lot to offer. So,
and it seems pretty simple. I mean, Gordy's got it flying, so.
Yeah, so I'm just, I shouldn't have done that. Never mind. I can zoom in like 200% that way, and then just, whoops. So this is my submission for my electrical, and I'm just going to skim it. You can see there's quite a lot in here, but there's lots of schematics that you need to do and draw. And so as we go through this, you'll see here's an AnyRail drawing that shows the layout and shows the sections of the layout to give you a general overview of the part of my layout I submitted for my electrical. There's level number 2, and it really is that basic. And then as we go through, some of this is going to be a bit descriptive, so I'm just going to zoom out so I can see a bit further down the document. But as we go down to here, what it's written up, but there's a schematic that I've done using AnyRail. And so what I have done here is I've taken an AnyRail image that gives you the very much outline of that track plan we looked at before, and then I've actually drawn in some bigger track feeds to show you where the track feeds are, but you can see the little grey triangles to show you where the isolation sections are, and that's how it forms the block. So yeah, it's a very, very versatile piece of software. You can use it for all kinds of drawings. Here's another AnyRail drawing that's showing you how it used. So because you can export it as an image, you can plop that image down into another document or even into Paint, and you can do even more onto the top of it. You can just have that AnyRail image as a background image. But I only ever had to draw this once. All I did is draw it once and then make the modifications as to how it was being viewed using that Show tab to get the different styles that I wanted to produce all of the drawings, all of the images that you see in this supporting evidence document. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So yeah, I think that's your AnyRail 101. And you know, if there's any questions, we can take it. But I think we're up on our time.
I think you've answered all the questions as we went. It looks like a great bit of software. I like how versatile it is. It can do right from the armchair modeler and the guy that's planning in the future, and they can actually operate, see if that's going to work, and then they can design and build as they go, and also use it for my AP program. So it's something that I'll be looking into. Thank you, Gordy.
Absolutely. Well, you're welcome.
Alright guys, we're just going to cut to a quick ad, and I believe Martin's got one of his whiz-big quiz shows back. Hopefully he's got the right answers and used Google this time instead of the cheap Chinese browser that he was using before, and got the correct answers for this one. So
yeah, this one's been confirmed. I mean, there was a bit of discretion last night on a couple of questions, but yeah, my Chinese sources from the Trivia Question Company assured me they were correct.
Well, as long as this isn't another model railroading train crash on someone else's layout, we'll be fine.
You've got to keep pushing that, don't you?
Well, that was what the cars were doing, I heard. So we'll cut to the ad, and we'll be back shortly.
Okay, so we're back. I've got another little quiz to go through tonight. This shouldn't be as controversial as last night's quiz. There were a few emails and a few chats after the show about the accuracy of a couple of the answers, but I've been assured by our quiz gurus that this has all been checked and fact checked. So today we should be 100% correct.
I wait
Anyhow.
to see. I wait to see.
Look, have faith. Have faith. So today's quiz is all going to be based on name trains. So famous trains around the world that have their name. So everybody's got to guess their name. I'll give you a clue as to what they are, and they've got to guess their name.
So I guess everyone jump on your keyboards, start putting the answers into the chat. We'll read out a few as they come in, and then we'll give the answer away, and we'll see how we go for 10 questions?
10 questions, so we'll see how we go towards the end.
Okay.
You're looking at the chat. I can't see the chat or anything here, so...
I'll do my best. Let's get it going.
Okay. Hang on. Oops, I've hit the wrong button there. Okay, so first question. Here we go. So this Indian train was originally meant to be used by the rulers of the states of Rajaputana, Gujarat, and Nizam of Hyderabad, and then by the Viceroy of the British India. Now, this train departs from New Delhi on an 8-day journey, covering the states of Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. So, what's the name of the train? And there's silence. You can hear crickets. I can even hear crickets in the chat.
Silence. I'm not really that great with geography, so half of those towns I wouldn't even know if they're in the outback of New South Wales or Victoria. So the only thing that's a giveaway is British India means that I'm guessing it's not in Queensland.
No. So Rajaputana, Gujarat, and the Nizam of Hyderabad, and then it was taken over by the Viceroy of the British India. So that would have been the British delegate of British India. So we got to wait for the chat to catch up because the stream goes out a little behind. It lags by about 10, 15 seconds, I think, at the moment. Yeah. So we've got to wait for the chat to catch up to see what the answers are at pop up before we.
It could be a little. We're probably actually closer to 45 seconds behind, but look, how do you, just while we're waiting for this to catch up, where do you come up with these quizzes and these questions, honestly?
Oh, too much time spent on Google. Someone showed me how to use Google a little while back, and it's it's taken up a lot of time, and I'm finding a lot of things on Google. So quiz questions are one of them. Like I said, I found a reliable source in Hong Kong that will put me quiz questions together, even on Australian railways, and they assure me the answers are 100% correct.
Well, the first comment that just come up was from my dialer friend from last night, Andy Ambrose, goes, "But do you have the questions right?" Okay, looks like we've got a few answers coming in. Andy Ambrose has got the Flying Welshman.
No.
What about Craig Mackey over in Facebook says Google Mail?
Google Mail? No, it's not called Google Mail.
Well, okay. Look, how about a little hint for everyone out there? Just this is the first question of the round.
It's in India.
Okay.
And it's aimed at the heads or the rulers of these states. So India used to be a bunch of tribes, basically. So the rulers of these tribes used to have this very plush train. Now, of course, it had to be plush because then the viceroy or the British representative in the British Isle of British India decided that they were going to take it over. So they then used it. So it's going to be very plush. and the method that it's transported, the way it moves.
Okay. I see. We've got a few
Oh.
extra comments in there. I see Rob's got Palace on the wheels.
Oh, I think Rob might have hit the nail on the head there. I think he was the quickest one on Google.
Oh, I don't know if I'm really going to enjoy this quiz show, Martin.
Oh, look, they get a little easier from now on, okay? This was the one I had to spend all afternoon on working out at Spay Rajapatana.
Ah, okay. Okay, let's get on to number 2 if you think it's going to get easier for me.
Okay, here we go. This historic train's route was between Paris and Istanbul, and it's featured in an Agatha Christie novel. So this one should be fairly straightforward, I think.
Really? Did you speak to my high school teachers or something? Because not only was I not great at geography, I really didn't read any books in English class either. I think someone's tipped you off.
No. So yeah, it goes between Paris and Istanbul, and the big clue is it featured in an Agatha Christie novel.
Look, honestly, I know there's a lot of people out there because these questions or these answers in the chat are coming through thick, and I've got at least 6 already, and it wouldn't be the Orient Express by any chance.
Oh, I reckon they all got that one right.
So we've got Craig, Al, Andy, Eric, Daz, and Peter and Debbie. They've all answered that, and they were all pretty much within seconds of each other.
Yep, like I said, they're not all going to be hard. I've got to pronounce some of these names, so they can't be too hard. But anyway, we'll move on to the next one.
I just wish I knew I had to pay attention in school to do some quiz shows for a virtual convention.
Okay, now I reckon our friend in Sweden might get this one first. This famous Swiss train runs from Zermatt to St. Moritz, and it's described as the slowest fast train in the world.
The slowest fast train.
That's a bit of a slowest fast train in the world.
Contradiction in itself, almost.
Yeah, and remember it's in Switzerland. So what do they have a lot of in Switzerland?
How about a little bit of a hint? Early on hint.
Oh, I don't know, because I reckon the chat's going to take off. A little bit of a hint. Okay, well, I mentioned Switzerland. They're usually famous for chocolate, cowbells, and big mountains, aren't they?
Oh, okay.
So it's one of those 3.
The Cowbell Express, maybe then, eh?
Yep. Oh, it's the answers are. I don't know what YouTube's doing. Facebook's doing.
They've literally. I think that's just gone through onto the stream because it's just come through thick. As, the Glacier Express, I believe, is the answer.
That's correct. The Glacier Express. One of the trains I'd like to go on one day. But yes, apparently it's a fast train, but it goes up the side of this mountain, so it doesn't go that fast. But anyway.
Okay, interesting.
Let's move on to the next one. Oh, I've hit the wrong button.
Oh, I reckon I could get this answer on this one right any time.
Yeah, I reckon this one was a bit of a giveaway. So
we'll venture on to the next one, hey?
We'll move on to the next one, but yeah, the Flying Scotsman. I mean, that was pretty simple. I think the battery must be going flat in this mouse at the moment, so. Okay. So here's another one for the geography, Brad. So this world-famous Russian railway traverses 8 time zones in a period of 7 days. The main route is Moscow to Vladivostok.
Okay, well, you've helped me because I definitely know where Russia is. And
Yep.
doing NMRAx stuff, I know about time zones, and that's about all I can take from it. Because
Okay, well, when we deal with our friends in the States, we have what, 4 time zones. So these guys have got 8. So it's going from one side of the other. So what area does it traverse to get there? That's a hint to the name.
look, I'm not going to give it away too quick because I'm keen to see if everyone out there is actually paying attention to me and you, or they're just sitting back having a laugh at us. But
I don't know, but I see a couple of answers have popped up in the.
I was just about to say as they popped up, being that the fact that it crosses all this, it would have to have a trans in the name of this train, I dare say.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I do see they're now starting to come through. There's 3 or 4 there with the correct answer. I'm guessing they're the correct answer off my non-really intelligent skill set here. But the Trans-Siberian Express, I'll take it.
Yep, the Trans-Siberian Express is the one. And yeah, that's the chat went nuts here with that. Anyway, okay, so that was question 5. Let's go on to question 6 and see what we can do. Okay, this is a network of Japanese trains, also known as bullet trains. The name, when translated, means new trunk line. So we're talking about Japanese trains here, and I'd say they're the quick ones because they're calling them bullet trains.
Yeah.
I'd hardly call the 515 from Flinders Street to Belgrave a bullet train, but there you go. So what is the name?
What is the name? Oh, I'm just taking a step back because I'm just really proud that we've showed you how to use Google, and you've also figured out there's a translate function in Google as well. So
There is. Yep.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed, Martin.
Yeah, I've learnt new languages with Google. I found out I've got an email. I found out there's people trying to contact me for the last 6 years, but...
Okay, so I see someone's obviously onto Google because these answers all of a sudden just come in thick and fast. And
yeah, straight away.
I dare say you're looking at the YouTube one and there's already 3 or 4 of those in there.
I would agree. There's a few there, and the Shinkansen is, yes, the Japanese bullet train. So yeah, Andy Ambrose and Eric are jumping in there real quick, and I don't know. I reckon they must have an advantage somehow. Andy must be a speed typer in Google.
Oh, I'm just wondering if there was a leaked quiz that went out to these guys that are sitting over there in the lobby or anything like that.
Well, there could have been. Well, they can hear us before it goes out on the stream.
Well, you just never know. Insider trading.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, we'll have to ban those for cheating. But anyway, let's move on to the next question. Question 7. This should be fairly easy for everyone. This historic Australian train runs between Adelaide and Darwin, and its name is derived from the train's old name, the Afghan Express.
Well,
so if Andy Ambrose comes in first now, he's out.
Look, this is actually I know this train, and this is actually on my bucket list of trains to travel on. So
they're sneaky. They're watching the YouTube, but they're listening to the Facebook stream because there's a latency between the two. So look, this quiz is now becoming competitive.
Lucky there's no prizes or anything to give away yet.
Yeah, lucky.
Very cutthroat out there, I see. But I see the answers coming quick and fast here at the moment. So Al was actually the first one to get the right answer.
Oh, cool.
Actually, no, I stand incorrect because now I go back through both chats. I believe Darren was the first one.
Ah, cool. Okay, so that was question 7. So let's move on to question 8. And what did I have here? Okay, this American train travels 3,924 kilometers between Chicago and Emeryville, California. What's the name?
Well, I'm very pleased now that you moved into a continent that I model, but still, passenger train's not really my thing.
Yep, passenger train, and it goes from Chicago. So, yeah, there's two main passenger trains that leave Chicago and head west. So, you're going to pick one of those. That's my hint.
Look, I'm going to say nearly 90% sure that the question has already been answered in the chat here by one, but I'll just let it go for a little longer. And there's a few passenger trains over there in the States that have got a good name for themselves that are still kicking around, aren't there?
There is.
So I see the. Oh, okay. Here we go. Now we've got a few coming in. I see Darren Lee's got the Super Chief. Any chance?
No, not the Super Chief, unfortunately.
Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't think it was going to be quite that. There's obviously one that everyone thinks it is, and I'm going to guess I'll go with them that it is. But Andy, Craig, and Eric, and even John all have the California Zephyr.
That's correct. The Amtrak's California Zephyr. So, and the Empire Builder will take you up to Seattle, up on the north side of the West Coast. But and then the Southwest Chief is the other one, I believe. Anyway, before I mention something wrong again, we'll move on to question 9.
Okay, and question 9 is?
Okay. Okay, this Canadian train runs between Toronto and Vancouver and started operations in April of 1955. So between Toronto and Vancouver, and that's not Toronto in Sydney.
Oh, damn. Actually, it's funny you say this. This here is another train that's actually on my wife and my bucket list to go on, and this area is amazing. Stunning, isn't it?
It is. I definitely want to go on this one myself. There's 2 train trips I really want to do, and that's this one and the one from Anchorage out to Fairbanks, which is you're just about in Gordy's backyard then.
Pretty much, just a stone's throw away. So it'd be sort of jump on the train, give Gordy a call, and go, hey, make sure you got a coffee ready for me.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
there's
what do we reckon?
Look, they're out in the chat, and there's quite a few coming through with the Canadian.
The Canadian, that's correct. So, and that was verified by Ralph Renzetti, who is Canadian as well. So,
I'm glad you're using a third-party checker there as well for questions like that.
Now, here's one for speed. This South African luxury train runs between Pretoria and Cape Town and is operated by Lux Rail. And it is a very luxurious train. And it's in South Africa. So you can talk with a funny accent on the train and people will understand you.
South Africa, luxury train.
So, what would be the name of this train?
It sounds very very posh. Wonder what a posh name for this train would be down in South Africa. Any hints for us? Like, it is South Africa. It could be anything for all I know.
It is. It's very colourful, the name.
Oh, very colourful. So interesting. And of course, as soon as we start talking about the chat goes wild with the answer, and I definitely have to say it's the answer because there's half a dozen or more across both chats. But it wouldn't be the blue train by any chance?
Ah, yes, the blue train. Never been on it, seen a video of it.
I'll have to talk to Speed and see if he's ever been on it or came close to it.
So there you go. There's our 10 questions for tonight. And I don't see any disgruntled messages coming up on in the chat, so I think I might have actually got the answers right.
Well, I was actually going to say, if anyone's got any problems, feel free to drop around into the lobby, and I'll make sure I corner Martin over there, and we can all give him a bit of curry if there's something that wasn't quite right, and we've got proof to go against him.
Ah, well, there you go. This is what happens when you got to write the questions.
So, Martin, this has tied us out for day 2.
It has.
It's been a pretty good day. I'm just going to get rid of your screen share so we're both big.
Yeah, kill that.
Okay, so it's been a pretty awesome day. Halfway through the convention so far. I just like to say to everyone, don't forget to head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. That way, tomorrow, Monday, and all future events that we put on, you'll be notified, so you will never miss one of these events again. And I know that Martin's quiz shows ain't always going to be high on the list, but hey, beggars can't be choosers here.
Oh, look, we got a few things planned. We might be bringing back the Wheel of Chat just to keep Gordy happy.
Yeah, we like throwing it up for Gordy. Just while we're on the bit of housekeeping, I reckon if you're all liking what we're doing here for the AR convention, I reckon tomorrow when we go live, if everyone wants to pick out the URL that they're watching, why don't you email it to a mate, someone that you think that might be interested in it, and if they're not watching, get them over here. Show them what we're all doing over here, and even if they're not members, they can come watch, they can see what we're about, and you never know. They might want to join up or come around to your place and play some trains.
Yep.
So, anything else you want to add, Martin?
Oh no, we've got another full day tomorrow. I was just having a look at the calendar, and we're going to start off with John Lawrence from Kansas City, who's got a really neat clinic on signs and how to make your own signs and the wording that you'd have on signs. And then we've got Lloyd. Before Lloyd
Dave
comes in, we've actually got Dave Aberley's. We've rescheduled that clinic for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then everything from there is the next 2 clinics are pushed back 1 hour. So at 11 o'clock, you'll have Lloyd showing you how easy it is to get your golden spike. And then after that, we've got the Mudfather, Ralph Renzetti himself, who'll be coming on. And he has got, it's not a model railway layout or a piece of rolling stock, but it's a diorama that he's done. And the techniques he's used on there, I think, could be employed a lot with our building skills and the like. So Ralph's going to give us a breakdown of how he built this diorama. And then what have we got? We've got Arthur Hayes is going to join us after that for building wagons from scratch. And then I believe Mr. Casino himself, Craig Mackey, is going to be showing us how to do pallets, scratch build pallets. We've got a clinic then from Ken Scales down in Sydney on laser cut kits. And then Craig's coming back with PK, and they're going to do some weathering. Well, we've got a full day tomorrow.
We do have a full day, and I'm just looking through the schedule right now, and I'm gonna dub this day modelling day, because it's not general or anything like that. It is pretty detailed to weathering, scratch building things, and laser cut kits and stuff like that. So I'm going to call it modelling day for day 3.
Yep. And we've got another panel to finish it off with the road to MMR. So Gerry Hopkins and Peter Jackson, Arthur Hayes and Mike Bartlett are all going to join in. They're all MMRs in the Australian region. And I think we've got a really full day coming up. So I better go to bed.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get up
I
again.
think you better go to bed. But just so everyone knows, we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 8:30 Australian Eastern Time. I think that works out to be 4:30 Eastern American Time. So from that, I'm sure everyone can work out some time zones for around the world. But like I said, don't forget to head over to our YouTube channel, subscribe. That way you're never going to miss anything. And definitely share this event around friends and family that you think that may be interested that haven't seen us already, and get them in for day 3 and day 4, and that way they're not going to miss out on anything either. So Martin, I think I'm going to flick the lights out here because I'm a little tired today.
It's a bit that way. I'm thinking the same thing. So I'll bid you all adieu, and I'll catch you later.
Catch us all later.